My last upload to this channel was a project I worked on for over 2.5 years where I ventured to turn the game Resident Evil 2, the remake, into a cinematic movie free from narrative inconsistencies and plot holes, whilst adding a whole bunch of cinematic flair and storytelling. It's very good, go watch it please and thank you. Here's a card, click that. The reviews have been stellar and the response from the RE community has been overwhelmingly positive, the majority consensus being, this is much better than Welcome to Raccoon City. This is the movie we wanted. So I suppose I'd be the last person you'd expect to be making a video defending this rival movie, and would in fact take a more adversarial stance like how I purposely released mine just days before Welcome to Raccoon City to cash in on the boosted searchability. But no. I'm here to defend Welcome to Raccoon City, address the criticisms, and elucidate to its haters why, in the opinion of one major Resi superfan since day one, literally, it's actually not all that bad. I'm Ava Cassandra, but today this is my second channel, Byehazard, where we focus on all things gamesy, most things Resident Evil, and I'm here today to put a case forward in defence of Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City. See, I said the video title, I did the thing, isn't that cool? Part 1. Context. And of course, I'm dressed as our leading lady, Claire Redfield. Now, before we go any further, let's address the elephant in the room. Is that a dick joke? Yes, okay, I'm aware. It is what it is, and you know what it is. And if you don't know what it is, well then don't worry about it, because you don't need to worry about what it is. But if it is, then it is. And if you do know, then you know. And if you know it is, then it is what it is. But you already knew that, didn't you? Subscribe for more.
You cross-dressing freak!
Part 1. Context. Okay, before going into this movie, there are two very important pieces of context to consider, at least. The first being, Resident Evil is a series of video games. It's a franchise that started as and has its roots in video games, specifically survival horror video games. Even that is up for debate these days. Secondly, there's already a previous series of Resident Evil movies. Well, 2 if you count the animated movies which are canonical to the games universe despite being on the one hand batshit insane in their own right. And then on the other hand, just unbearably boring.
It starts with fear. Humans fear the unknown. Yeah. The Greeks said it best. There is much to fear in this world.
But these series of movies I'm referring to are of course the ones fronted by Paul W.S. Anderson starring Mia Jovovich as Alice, aka the biggest Mary Sue to ever Mary Sue in cinema. And financially they were incredibly successful, racking up something like $1.2 billion worldwide. 6 films that are more about crazy action set pieces and hot sexy slow-mo shots than they are the survival horror roots from which they bore. Are things born from roots? Is that a good metaphor? The first film was actually received pretty well by both critics and fans of the games as being a refreshing Resi story separate to the games but loosely feeling like a prequel that remained true to the feelings of survival horror and tension with all the quintessential things we like to see. Zombies, infection, monsters, horror, gore, cool characters and a naked Mia Jovovich. Which by the way, can you believe the role of Alice was offered to Sarah Michelle Gellar, who turned it down back in the day because of nudity. As a massive fan of Buffy, I am completely geeked out at the idea of her being a staple in the Resident Evil universe.
No thanks. I'm good.
Especially since I have a lot of theories behind Claire Redfield being somewhat inspired by Sarah's portrayal of Buffy.
Alright, I get it. You're evil. Do we have to chat about it all day?
But more on that later. Not. The second film, Apocalypse, and probably my personal favourite, treads the grounds of Resi's 2 and 3, focusing on the Raccoon City outbreak, the story of Jill Valentine, and of course everyone's favourite iconic big bad, Nemesis. Stars. All goes well as an impeccably cast Sienna Gilroy brings Jill Valentine to life and we have the movie we always wanted. Until...
Move!
Alice comes in to steal the show. She's not a character from the games, remember, and Jill fucking Valentine has to take a back seat to her.
Who the fuck are you?
She's got superpowers now and they make a lot of really fun sounds. Alice steals the spotlight at every opportunity. At one point, Jill is being a total badass, ready to set a room ablaze with a light as she's been established as a smoker, so it makes sense, okay? Only for it to just not work. But Alice is here and was watching, I guess, and finishes her job for her, I guess. This one scene is an allegory for the entire movie and ultimately the entire series. By the way, Alice fights and kills Nemesis and not Jill. Third movie, the world has ended and turned into a Mad Max pastiche, and we have domesticated zombies, some lame bad guy, Alice has telekinesis, there's a girl called Kmart, and clones happens, but hey, here's Claire Redfield, so that's cool. Fun movie, but where the fuck is my Resident Evil? Afterlife is what comes after extinction, and I like the title, that's clever. Anyway, the world isn't a desert after all, because why should it be? Consistency is only for those who are paying attention, and value things such as plot. The clones cliffhanger from the last film goes nowhere, as all the clones are killed, yes it's that simple, and Wesker takes away Alice's powers as if we're ever going to feel any tension from her end ever again anyway. Everyone's left on a boat, Claire was brainwashed, Chris is here, and he's either been horribly miscast or horribly dressed, probably both. The Axeman is here, the soundtrack is cool, Claire is wet, Alice shoots pennies out of a gun because the director just feels like making the animators' day hell, and Wesker is here, and he's mad at Claire and Chris because he's never met them before, but who cares, it's a good opportunity to riff off the cool fight from Resi 5. Retribution follows immediately after and we start afresh. Chris and Claire, who knows what happened to them, Jill is back and that's literally all that matters. Clones and artificial worlds pull a got 'em on us multiple times as a fun excuse to bring back old actors. Everyone is in various states of cosplay where they're all consistently militaristic except for Jill, who's in her catsuit because it's from the game, and Leon is in a t-shirt because it's from the game, and Barry is dressed entirely differently to everyone else because it's from the game, and Ada Wong is in a floor-length dress and very expensive wig. Oh my god, look it up, that wig costs so much money because it's from the game. Who cares how silly that looks? Isn't it cool? Doesn't this feel like Resident Evil, the video game series? Leon's casting is weird. He looks like PewDiePie, Barry looks like a whole other man, their characters are boring, everyone says Ada is perfect because she's Chinese and she's pretty, forgetting that she can't speak English well enough to not be entirely dubbed over and is also quite short and lacks any presence, and I like my Ada to be badass, with legs all the way up to her ears. Like, there's no shortage of Asian actors who could have made a great Ada. But she brings in the punters, I guess. And Jill is perfect. Fights ensue, apparently there's a plot, bada bing bada boom, it's the end. Wesker wants good now, Alice has her powers back, the band is back together, for one big showdown at the White House. What a cliffhanger. Boy, I can't wait to see how the next film is going to handle this. So anyway, fuck all that, the final chapter follows Alice going back to Raccoon City to take one massive shit all over the previous 5 movies' continuity and established lore. The backstory for the genesis of the virus that started all this gets explained to us despite us already getting a different explanation in the second movie, and my god, did the creators of this not watch their own franchise? It's held together by the flimsiest excuse of a story anyway, and they couldn't even keep hold of that? Anyway, more superhuman shit, way too many cuts per second, Wesker gets killed by a door actually, and it's all over. The point is, fans of the acclaimed game series tend not to like these movies. Maybe you can see why. They took a franchise about survival horror, intimately claustrophobic environments with character threatening zombies and monsters, tension for survival, and turned it into The Alice Show, all about how cool she is as she practices martial arts against any name they can drop. They're a mess and they're stupid and they are a guilty pleasure. But fans overwhelmingly do not like them, the lack of faithfulness in favour of utterly jumping the shark being one of the main reasons why. But fans have been crying out for a more faithful cinematic adaptation of these games to come and grace the screen, and that's what we've been promised, at long last. That in itself is a pretty ballsy move to do away with one franchise to make way for fans of the games. Boy oh boy do I hope it satisfies them. They've always been so easy to please. Now that you know that context, and the long disappointing history of Resident Evil in cinema, let's bring all that baggage with us as we take a look at Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City and decide, does it really deserve the hate? Is it all that bad? Is it all that good? What is the good? Part 2. Overview. Movies are a lot, and as any film student will tell you, that's a massive understatement. They'd use a lot more words than that though, and probably throw in at least half a dozen unnecessary phrases that they think the rest of us aren't privy to. And then they'd say it in, I don't know, black and white, to look deep, or whatever. I don't know, I studied graphic design and illustration. And now I make videos about games in between working at a nightclub, where I neither design graphics nor illustrate. So who really has the useful degree here? I want to be very careful with this video to not simply retread the entire movie and leave you with my thoughts and commentary as I recount every detail and scene and story beat that happened. Otherwise you may as well just be watching the movie again. And I may as well just call this video a retrospective or whatever. Seriously, are those videos meant to be explaining the games to people who have already played them, or just spoiling it for those who haven't? Answers in a filtered comment, please. I want some structure here, some method to my madness. Would you believe every off-the-cuff quip and whimsical statement thus far has been entirely scripted? So I'm planning on breaking down this movie into several parts to review. We've got a lot of ground to cover and a lot of cats to fuck. That is a phrase, isn't it? Anyway, you grab the legs, cause we're diving right in. Ugh. There's ingredients to our Jill sandwich. First, with a slice of plot. Yep, firstly is the plot rundown. Call it a refresher. An opinionated crash course covering the events of REWTRC. I actually think it is just quicker to say the full title, Welcome to Raccoon City. I'll be quick, I promise, don't worry, I usually am, ask me boyfriend. We'll examine what happens, see how it holds up compared to the games, and raise some points and address some criticisms. No essay is a good essay if it's not an essay that includes arguments, and we're not going to start shying away from those today, in this essay. Second up, the filling of this Jill sandwich, the meat of the butty. Characters. Characters are the biggest point of contention I see across the internet, and I've been doing a lot of interneting. There's not one Resi Facebook group or Discord server or niche YouTube community that I've not got a foot in the door of to overhear the lofty takes of a famously opinionated fanbase. So I'm going to examine each character just to see what everyone's deal is. Thirdly, closing our sandwich, an opposite slice of conclusion as we examine intention. What does the movie set out to do? Does it do well? What does it do well? And then we'll end on something fun and good. It's a surprise, you'll see. Just wait. So shit, let's get to it without further ado. Part 3, the plot rundown. Raccoon City is a shithole town, I quote. Much smaller this time round, Claire Redfield alongside her brother Chris are in the Raccoon City orphanage, they're kids. And it's our first time getting to see our characters as kids, so that's really fun. They're much closer in age this time round compared to the games, but a big age gap will cause problems for storytelling. The lady at the front desk is watching Golden Girls, and my god, rest in peace Betty White. Anyway, young Claire looks really good, and a lot like Kaya Scodelario, but Christ is her acting questionable. She sounds like she's reading off cue cards. Lisa Trevor shows up because yes, she's fucking here, only she seems nicer? Less threatening? Or maybe she's just as sinister as the games. Who knows? Not us, not yet. William Birkin shows up and gives major bad guy vibes, probably because he's the bad guy and is not hiding it. Flash forward, it's the modern day and it's 1998, and we have a very forced one-sided conversation from a trucker who talks like an expositional narrator and not like any actual real human. He hits a body, they talk about it, are a bit stupid, Claire has a hoodie on, and the zombie walks away because you know that's what zombies of Resident Evil are famous for, walking away from their favourite food. But Claire seems to know her shit, I guess. The dog eats the blood, I like that, and then bam, title card. Classic red font, such a good move. You know it's for the fans. We get exposition through on-screen text, which is fine because the music is good and creepy, and I'd rather this than listen to the truck driver tell me again. So here's Leon Stupid Kennedy, played by Avon Yogia, who I'll not lie is very dreamy, waking up hungover or drunk in a reference to the original backstory from the original game's guidebook, but not explicitly the game itself. Homework. Nice. Emmy's Diner makes a comeback as apparently the entire Raccoon police force are in here having breakfast. There's charm, there's camaraderie, and these people interact like real people and not a bunch of boring grunts devoid of personality outside of missions and outbreaks, which is nice to see. People used to always say they wanted to see shit like this, and now we're getting it. Jill makes a Jill sandwich joke and is full of personality, as she is a gun-crazy loose cannon, adopting some of Barry Burton's personality traits, while Wesker is less sunglasses at night obvious bad guy and more of a likeable tough guy himbo, with real motivations and real height to him. Seriously, he's a whole man, you could climb him like a mountain. Leon is explained to be, well, stupid, which explains why he's in this shithole town. Of course, it's a shithole town. This kind of story can only be told in small, tiny, isolated shithole towns, so why wouldn't the rookie cop be, let's say, far from the best? The lady's eye bleeds in a genuinely creepy scene, followed by a dodgy CGI bird. Truck driver is a fake fan as he never says his dog's a maniac. Why'd he bite me? Chris's house tells us all sorts. He's into sports. He was groomed by Umbrella/William to be a perfect cop. Is he actually adopted or not? Because Chris Redfield becoming technically Sherry Birkin's adopted brother is not something I expected to see. Claire plays Ben's tape, and I don't know why, but Ben just gives me the creeps. We get a basic explanation of how the virus got out, and hey, it's better than some leeches impersonating an old man masquerading as a twink who sings opera from atop a mountain in the name of revenge, so props for that origin story. Sherry has a dream of a hunter, and Annette the brunette just seems like some lady and not her character from the games. The city's lights go out, and then some backup power comes on, and a creepy alarm plays throughout the city, demonstrating Umbrella's control over the town. There's an itchy tasty moment and a genuinely cool moment of fan service if they didn't linger on it so much here, again, when she says it, and in every trailer of this movie. Hey, did you see that niche reference to a file in the game? Did you get it? You big brain gamer, you know the thing, and we know you do. The kid's fucking weird, and Claire gets her bike. Stars are dispatched after a fun scene of Chief Irons telling off Albert Wesker. Who would have thought they'd ever see the day? Anyway, it's time to shit on Leon, and then we go. Here's a fun reference to Trent's little computer that he gives to Jill from the S.D. Perry novelizations of the first games in a cool moment of fan service. Them novels are really good, check them out. Who got into Wesker's locker anyway? You'll notice it's a police station with about 3 staff. Oh well, it looks like the games. A literal crossroads as multiple characters cross paths. Nice. Leon sees what's going on after sleeping through a whole truck crash and explosion, but the music was excellent, so who's mad? The scene of the zombie just walking in on fire made to be such a puzzling choice. Was it a stuntman who just really didn't feel like acting? Was it meant to be funny? Because it was, and I don't know how intentional that was. Or was it meant to be creepy? As a visual, it's so jarring and unexpected, it's almost unnerving and creepy. In a movie about shambling zombies, the guy walking normally is what's creepy, and that says something about how effective the subversion of expectation is in exuding actual horror, rather than one simple take on what is horror through contrived and established visuals and tone. Food for thought, I like it. She finds leaves and the stars arrive in the woods. Guys, we get the stars in the Arkley Forest, isn't this cool? I was so excited. Anyway, Jill takes no shit and just shoots the fuck out of a bird, and thank God someone in a film actually does that. They enter the mansion willingly because they're looking for their teammates, and aren't chased in by dogs this time. I suppose it makes sense because Brad needs to be in the helicopter for it to crash later, and we haven't had the dog reveal yet because it happens in about 3 scenes in the car park. So, they walk on in. None of them know about the zombies or anything yet, so I guess they're just waltzing into some house, and the worst thing they've seen thus far is a bird. They split up, and more on this later. The USS stop people leaving in another genuinely creepy scene which also comes across as funny. Claire saves the day, and she and Leon meet finally. Stars fight their way through the mansion, and Richard gets killed by zombies, and interestingly not a giant snake or giant shark. Brad gets got, Wesker plays the piano because it's like that one puzzle. Big crash. Claire gets gunned up, Leon has a vested interest in body armour. Get it? They meet Ben, but he's rude and kind of dumb, and now dead. But he did explain why some characters were immune. Jill finds Wesker out, so now he gets both a light version of his betrayal arc and also Barry's betrayal arc from the game. Only instead of being the big bad evil, he just wants to fuck his friends over to get money to get out of town. Fair play. They also react to a zombie for the first time, and we're over an hour into this movie and people are still only just now finding out they're zombies. This is the worst speedrun ever. Back to the orphanage, cool as fuck Liquor scene, cooler as fuck Lisa Trevor scene. Hey, there's those keys, down we go. Bye Lisa, and fuck you I guess. Chris gets a shootout with some zombies, evoking the feeling of ammo management from the games in a genuinely tense and awesome scene that's then followed by a bit with a lighter that's kind of annoying. As if a zombie would know to walk around Chris. Claire's suspicions from her childhood are confirmed as they discover the kids are being experimented on, which in a town like this probably doesn't mean many good things. Wesker finds William, and Annette, and Sherry, and shoots 2 out of 3. This girl on the table, by the way, genuinely horrific, oh my god. More on her please. Jill kills Wesker, nice. William takes the G-virus, which is different to the T-virus, but you'd forgive him for not exactly being aware of that yet. Everyone's here, William's a monster, but one that monologues far too much. Onto the train, the city's blowing up from underneath, or imploding, or sinking, or something. William's back on the train, and bigger and badder than before, but Leon saves the day in a move of poetic justice. Then they walk out the tunnel, and it's literally over that quick. Also Ada, told you it'd be fast. Part 3, Part 2. Plot discussion. So obviously this is a massively condensed version of what happens in 2 and a bit games. They've essentially combined RE1 and RE2 into one movie. I say essentially, but that's literally what they've done. And it's not the longest movie. I think the movie and the story suffers because of this, as the latter half feels so rushed compared to the former, which I actually think was paced really well. However, as I learned from my little experience with films, movies, short films, and the well-received and stunning project that is Resident Evil 2 the cinematic game movie, available on this channel now, please watch it, it's great and amazing, thank you. You just have to cram a lot of storytelling into as little time as possible. Some of the changes I quite liked, 2 in particular. The timing of both the mansion incident and the Raccoon outbreak felt authentic and plausible. It felt organic. The game's way is plausible too. But I'm more inclined to believe it all happened at once. The game's way is plausible too, but I'm more inclined to believe it all happened at once, rather than 2 separate outbreaks that happened months apart in isolation from each other. Consolidating the lab under the Spencer mansion and the lab, or nest, at the end of Claire and Leon's adventure was a good move and made sense. It's a small town, we don't need 2 different labs. 1 is crazy enough. The idea that there's 2 is a bit wild, or even 3 in the case of the games. Yes, Nest 2, I'm looking at you. At least. And then there's Outbreak as well. In the games, that city loved its labs. So what are the criticisms, generally? 2 games into 1 movie is a bad idea. Bad writing. Characters aren't faithful. There's a lot to cover on that front. The movie isn't faithful. Let's discuss the idea of being faithful. For me, it simply means I'd want to evoke the abstract and intangible feeling of playing the games to film. I'll tell you right now, the Paul W. S. Anderson movies definitely did not do that. Even if you give them a lifeline and say that the OP Alice represents being a player in a video game and everything feels oh so video gamey, which, maybe, but it's not a Resident Evil-y video game-y feeling. Let's also just put it out there right now that a movie just like the games would be terrible. A bunch of deliberately underdeveloped, partially self-insert characters slowly going about uncovering a plot that's an afterthought to a gameplay loop, while spending anything from 8 to 20 hours picking off enemies, solving puzzles, backtracking, unlocking doors, managing resources for a payoff that's a minute-long cutscene just before spending another few hours doing the same. Just wouldn't translate well to film. My god, it would be shit. And I know, I literally turned the game Resident Evil 2 into a movie, and I had to trim a lot of fat to gently straddle the line between being evocative of gameplay experience and telling an engaging, unboring story. RE2, the game movie, it's very good, check it out. If you ask me, which I suppose you are, we need to examine what makes a Resident Evil game. I've got it down to these few things. Characters, the vessels through which we experience it all. They're relatable yet dependable. They're capable enough for us to trust them and insert ourselves into their shoes, but also charismatic enough for us to want to play as them, care about them, be invested in their stories. They're cool, they make us feel safe, they're holding our hand as we go through this horrifying experience, and we're making them badasses in the process. This is no run-of-the-mill zombie franchise where the zombies are the main character or the only main character. It's Resident Evil. It's the character's world and the zombies are just living in it. Or dying. Or unliving. And then dying. Maybe. Enemies do make Resident Evil. Whether it's zombies, lickers and hunters, or Mr. X, Nemesis and Jack Baker, Resident Evil always serves us memorable and charismatic enemies, and they're a crucial part of the experience. Especially the more unique ones. Combat against them is fun too. Fear. Being scared and spooked, and more importantly, having fun with this. Simplicity. Now let me explain what I mean by that. The simple games with a simple premise are the most fun. Survive, save your friends, get out the police station, survive the nemesis. Simplicity is key, and I think this is what makes a good Resident Evil game or experience. A lot of entries in the franchise explore this boring, militaristic conspiracy angle. Ever since Resident Evil 5, we've had this whole international governmental conspiracy on the world, and it's the good guy's job to stop it. 5, 6, Revelations, Damnation, Vendetta, Infinite Darkness. Christ, it's all so boring. Just take me to the spooky haunted house style of horror. I don't need all this exposition. So how does the movie Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City stand next to criteria? Honestly, pretty well. It's far from perfect, but it's a good effort. Part 4. Characters. One of the biggest points people have against this movie is the characters, whether that's the characterization of them or the casting. So let's delve into. First of all, some characters were missing. Barry Burton, Rebecca Chambers, Bravo Team, Marvin Branner, Ada Wong as a character for the most part, technically anyway, Annette Birkin, functionally, Kendo, Mr. X, Tyrant. If you ask me, the merging of characters was a necessary way to trim fat, or else we'd be left with a wide cast of half characters. With the story they're trying to tell, some characters can assume multiple roles. Stars can be condensed, Jill and Wesker can share some of Barry's traits, Irons and Wesker don't need to be two-dimensional bad guys because we already have our antagonist in William Birkin. So let's examine the characters one by one, I guess in order of significance. We'll be looking at various things: their strength as a character, how this lines up with their video game counterpart, appearance and performance, and significance to the plot. First up, Claire Redfield.
Mine's Claire Redfield. I came to find my brother, Chris.
All in all, people don't have too much to say against Claire. She's adopted the early game's Jill's traits, such as being a capable, no-nonsense badass, albeit with a blank slate personality at times to make space for drive and a sense of justice. She's a leading lady who gets a shotgun and has conspiracy theories. Her motivations are solid, escaping abduction and God knows what else when she was much younger, and being rightfully pissed off at Umbrella and dedicated to taking them down and exposing them. She's a lone wolf who's been around the block. Claire from the games is without this backstory and simply wants to find her brother and instead winds up in the wrong place at the wrong time. She's much more light-hearted, compassionate, snarky, and the early games, and Degeneration, can't forget about that, gave her that protective big sister instinct. That's missing here. Unless you want to compare her relationship with Leon here to the one she has with Steve in Code Veronica. Though while she does look after him somewhat, nobody's quite that bad, and I like Steve.
What's going on?
Steve!
Kaya Scodelario looks the part and very much feels like a perfect fit for the kind of energy that remake Claire gives off. She's got those piercing blue eyes too, and her outfit ticks all the necessary boxes, except without Claire's iconic ponytail. I have an excuse. Have you tried putting a wig in a high ponytail? Jesus, it's hard. Maybe we need to just not look at it as a missing detail, but in fact something extra. Like, hey, how cool is it we finally get to see Claire with her hair down? Maybe she didn't want a scraggly damp fringe in all that rain. Maybe she didn't want tension pain from wearing a pony under a helmet. Maybe Kaya Scodelario just doesn't want bangs cut in. Claire's the main character and yet doesn't really trigger many of the main events of the story, other than finding things out and getting to the bottom of the mystery. It could seem like a survival story, but she came here by choice. She lands a few hits on the boss, but doesn't finish anyone off. Her best contribution to the plot is saving Leon a few times and getting the ball rolling as a viewer, explaining the gist to us. In a way, she represents the curiosity of the players who want to get to the bottom of the story, rather than those focusing on gameplay. Chris Redfield. Groomed by big corporation Big Brother, the idealistic cop who has the rug pulled from underneath him as he figures out not everyone's as good as they seem. Actually, that's giving very Leon's arc from the original RE2. He's dismissive of Claire's conspiracies, goes to the mansion, ends up surviving where others possibly wouldn't have. Both he and Richard were attacked by large groups of zombies. I think it's no coincidence they showed us he's got a background in football, and therefore knows his way around tackling a group, where someone without this experience, say Richard, would get got. He spends a majority of this movie alone until the end where he gets promoted to main character status, as Birkin gives a very RE5 Wesker-esque performance, showing a sudden disdain for Chris, throwing cliches at him before being bested by him. Chris also gets that cool shootout scene, representing the ideals of the games in horror, resource and ammo management and combat against zombies. Robbie Amell looks the part, and general consensus is he is a perfect fit for Chris, and I can see that. He's got the build, he's got the looks, and he's got the arms, and apparently the chest.
So you wax your chest now?
Funny.
However, Chris didn't even have facial hair in the early games, and I mean, he looks good, but the internet lost shit when Leon was revealed to have some facial hair. So let's just be consistent with our criticisms. I don't mind either way though. I do wish Chris had gloves. In fact, I wish all of Stars had gloves. Why don't they have gloves? Resident Evil used to be fingerless gloves. That's why I think they're so cool even to this day. His performance was good despite wobbly writing.
It's kind of impressive, but also what the fuck?
I think his voice would make for a perfect young Leon, as he gives very Nick Apostolides vibes. He's a good Chris. Chris in the games, especially the early ones, is just a bland character. Generic good guy protagonist. Justice, revenge, win, lose, rinse, repeat. In fact, early drawings of Chris kinda suggested a more 90s bad boy vibe to him, and his writing gave off the idea that he was a wannabe action hero with his terrible one-liners that failed to land.
So much for him. We got to the root of the problem. He is sleeping with the ultimate failure. Hurry up. You can't kill me.
Hey, it's up to us to take out Umbrella.
The S stands for stupid. Everyone is very upset about how Leon's been treated in this movie, like a joke, the laughing stock. But hear me out. Among a cast of very competent professionals, police, specialists, double crosses, and one very capable orphan who handled herself since childhood, we need a normal everyman to relate to. This is where Leon comes in. And if someone has to be the comic relief, it makes sense for it to be the new guy, the rookie. So it makes sense to assign that all to Leon. Would it be as fun if Leon walked in super capable himself? If Raccoon is such a shithole for any of this to be taking place in the first place, why would someone super competent, top of his class, be sent to this dump now of all times? His endearing naivete remains intact, though one of the best things from the games that is missing is his relationship with Ada Wong.
I'm not just gonna leave you here. What if you're attacked? What if you need help? I'll be fine.
see this through. And I want to see you again. I got plenty to live for, trust me.
Leon's story is one that goes from naive everyman to the star of the show, ready to become the action hero of the franchise. He has to start somewhere, and I think this movie is more focused on that, with development taking longer and not going as far as it did in the games. But he does get his moments towards the end as a hint of what's to come for the character. Appearance wise, oh boy, people weren't happy with this. I could give the general internet benefit of the doubt, be nice and say they're only taking issue with the fact his hair is longer and he has facial hair. But unfortunately that's not the case, and there is a very real problem people have with Ava Yogi as Leon, so let's call a spade and say it is what it is. It's racism. Leon's ethnicity in the games looks to be white, while Ava Yogi is, on his dad's side, Gujarati Indian, on his mother's side, English, Welsh, German, Irish, French Canadian or Canadian, and is from Canada. And people are taking issue with that, which by the way I find completely ridiculous. If you look at Ava Yogi, he, in my opinion, perfectly fits and gives off the same energy as a Leon type. Especially Leon at his most popular, Resident Evil 4 Leon. He'd make such a good RE4 Leon, yet he does such a good job at portraying naive rookie cop Leon too. A lot of people say he should be Carlos instead, based on Carlos's appearance in Resident Evil 3 Remake. Carlos, who is not Indian. Let's hear what Carlos himself has to say about this comparison.
When Leon in the movie happens to be of mixed heritage, Canadian, Caucasian, white Caucasian, and Indian from his father's side, he's brown, Mexican, Indian. That's what people remember. They don't see the Caucasian, they only see the exotic side, you know, like people like exotism, obviously. When there is a POC, people of color, they have to be categorized as exotic and colored only. For Leon, Indian, brown, Mexican, breakdancer, to some point, he looks like me. He looks nothing like me. I've heard people saying Avan Joga has curly hair. Excuse me? This guy could do like some commercial for L'Oreal. He has the most elegant straight hair. Why people making shit up? You know, like, oh, he looks like Carlos. He doesn't look like me. I'm Carlos, and I'm telling you, he doesn't look like me. This is not true. This is just like some crazy people, angry people trying to categorize Avan with me because we people of color, and that's stupid. It's like if I'm saying, oh, that you see that Thor-looking guy, the actor, I forgot his name. He looks like exactly like Stark, Iron Man, because they're Caucasian. Oh yes, they have the same hair. No, they look different. They're not the same person. Just because you happen to be Caucasian, or brown, or whatever, or exotic, doesn't mean that you look alike. This is not true. This is a fantasy, fueling with maybe hatred. Or I don't know what this is, but there's something wrong with these people. You know, trying to categorize me or Avan or Hannah John Kamen.
Did you know that Capcom artist Isao Oishi took his inspiration from his bloodhound dog, the design Leon S. Kennedy? Leon's hair topping his head, while the canine's soft bronze ambient fur represents Leon's Mediterranean soft skin tone. He used the prism of the canine to reflect Leon's loyalty and fidelity. Leon has brown eyes. You can see that in the inventory right here. The live action movie in Resident Evil 1 and the cinematics in Resident Evil 2 simply took some different directions. Leon S. Kennedy is Italian American, having immigrated to America from Italy at some point in his life. There is even an index. In the appearance section, Leon has stylish auburn hair and brown eyes. Leon's character texture.
I really enjoyed his performance and his appearance. Leon has long wannabe boy band hair, and he does here too. I'm sure he'd look just as good clean shaved, but some things change in adaptation, and he still looks good. Jill Valentine Valentine, almost the reverse of the treatment Claire got. Jill in the games was somewhat of a blank slate character, especially in the likes of the original, remake, Revelations, and 5 to some extent. Her personality only really shines in Resident Evil 3, both the original and the remake, more so the remake. Here she's quirky, she's fun, she's flirty and crushing on Wesker, and she's the one wearing a vest and a ponytail, not Claire. I tell you, they could have swapped these characters around. Adopting Barry Burton's fondness for guns is a really fun move into making her a bit of a loose cannon, but still capable, and of course, badass. She unfortunately doesn't influence the plot too much, and I wanted more for the First Lady of Resident Evil. But the moments she does have are effective. We experience her betrayal at the hands of Wesker, even though the writing kind of makes it seem like he was just offered a better job and wants to get out of a shithole town to pursue this better job. It's being treated as if like you've betrayed your friends, but I don't think Wesker knew there was going to be zombies in the mansion. He's just chasing the money, and yeah, he's a dick about it eventually, but we experience feelings of betrayal, her saving Chris, her looking after Sherry, again, stealing Claire's job, putting herself forward to get the group to safety, and of course being the one to land the kill shot on Wesker, and somehow being able to have an endearing moment with him immediately after. She even interacts with Leon for the first time in the franchise history, and it's a conversation we've all been waiting a long time to see.
Nice to meet you, Leon Kennedy.
It's nice to hear her comfort the rookie who she was just picking on. More of this, please. Appearance-wise, her iconic blue tube top is hinted. Appearance-wise, her iconic blue tube top. Her iconic blue tube top is hinted at here. Whether it's a vest or not, we won't know, but she's been given this interesting sleeveless jumpsuit. Now, hear me out. That combined with her curly hair really evokes the same energy as like Ripley from the Alien franchise. And that's a pretty cool idea considering there are definitely parallels between the characters and stories alike. The actress Hannah John Kamen doesn't tend to wear her hair this curly in other roles, so that's what makes me think it's a stylistic choice. Aliens was the 90s. She definitely has the appearance of Jill Valentine though. A striking face with piercing eyes, supermodel proportions, and a radiant charisma that echoes the previous face models we've had. Again, there are criticisms against the casting because of her race. She's half Nigerian, half Norwegian. Jill's ethnicity has been speculated a fair bit due to differing sources giving different information. The general consensus is she's half Japanese, half French, with little to no evidence of this in the games. So I don't really see the problem behind casting someone half Nigerian, half European. She plays the part well and looks cool.
Same thing for Hannah John Kamen. She's black. She's black only. You know, she's Norwegian, by the way, from the mother's side. Nigerian from the father's side, but she's only black when she's playing Jill, you know, because she's mixed heritage. Guess what? Jill is of mixed heritage. She's half Japanese, so that makes her half Asian, right? She's Asian only, because obviously you forget about the other side. So it makes more sense to me to have a Jill with mixed heritage in the adaptation. And by the way, in adaptation, you can change the actor. It doesn't matter. Look, Aquaman. You know, he's blonde in the comics. Blue eyes, blonde, neat shaved, like he doesn't have a beard. Guess what? Jason Momoa. He's not blonde, he doesn't have blue eyes. Samuel L. Jackson is Nick Fury. Have you seen Nick Fury in the original comic? And some people are funny, I swear.
She delivers some great emotional moments, and I think, for me, she's the most enjoyable to watch in this movie. I was excited to see Jill on screen the most, and I think Jill always needs more love in this franchise. Another positive note I have is Jill and Wesker's romance, if you could even call it that, went nowhere. She had a crush on him, allegedly, and that's all. That was nice and fresh. We didn't need the whole love story angle. If there's any love story being shoehorned into my Resident Evil, it's Leon and Ada, or no one. Once considered the main big bad of the Resident Evil series, here's his origin story, and we're starting with a complete blank slate. Forget everything you thought you knew about Wesker because this is a reinvention. The most drastic change of the characters, and I like it. Of course the leader of the Stars, if he even is that high in this movie, would at least have an iota of likability and some sort of relationship with his teammates. This is in contrast to the games who have him as some shady guy who, while being the manufactured captain of a bogus special police team, also moonlights as not just a scientist and whole entire other career, but quite high up on it that. And even then we're still not introduced to his real employer, all while in sunglasses. I get it's good for the double agent angle, the twist, The leader was the bad guy all along. Conspiracies and corruption, but my god was it stupid. And sunglasses at night. It's like he wanted you to know he was the bad guy. This time around, we've got someone with more depth, more nuance. He's not a cartoonish villain, but his story is in fact more reminiscent of Barry's arc from the first game, just with a worse outcome. He's a cop. He's in a shithole town that's falling apart around him and he wants to get out. That is offered to him and he just needs to sell out his teammates. So he does it and now he's working for the guys who want to take down the bad guys. Do two wrongs make a right? There is nuance though. For example, look at this. Wesker advises they all split up in the mansion.
The faster we find them, the faster we can get the fuck out of here.
I thought this line was delivered pretty badly until I watched it again and realised he's almost convincing himself of his own lie. He doesn't believe this, he knows it's a load of shit, but he needs to be alone to get on with his business. So when the team decide against this, look his expression. He knows it's not going to go well and he's either going to get found out or have to hurt his friend, and he's not thrilled by that idea. He's an asshole, but a nuanced arsehole. He looks good too. Some people are complaining about him not having sunglasses, and they're ridiculous. Definitely an interesting character, and watching his journey through this movie was nice in a way because we didn't actually know what was coming. We could almost sympathise with him. Some lines I felt were a bit iffy.
You saved my life.
And Tom Hopper's performance definitely leaves Wesker looking a little bit like a himbo. Here's our obvious big bad. He has no intention of hiding how evil he is, I guess. What was just the scientist behind the G-Virus and the outbreak of the T-Virus has now been upgraded to main antagonist. Umbrella's lab seems smaller, but he still seems to be the one calling the shots. He runs the orphanage, he kidnaps the kids, he makes the viruses. In the games, our favourite thing about William was his G-Virus mutations and the many monstrous forms he took that we had to battle against. Honestly, he's one of my favourite bosses in all video games. And many Resident Evil games have tried to replicate the relentless, consistent main monster of the game who stops at nothing to get you and keeps evolving throughout the entire game, but have failed to do so. I especially liked how monstrous he was. He didn't really talk, he didn't have long villain monologues, he was driven by an urge to reproduce, disturbingly with his own offspring. Poor Sherry. How gross. How cool. So in this movie, kinda scratch all that. He has one form that's very reminiscent of a tyrant, they make quick work of him, bada bing bada boom, he's on the train, then literally bada boom, as he's minced by a rocket. He just fell into being angry at Chris and Claire, I guess, and kind of fucked off his daughter. Compelling villain during the movie, shite final boss. Chief Irons, one of the coolest, most twisted and most horrifying bad guys in Resident Evil, mostly because of how evil he was outside of the zombie outbreak. The guy who was implied to have hunted and raped for spores, all the while sowing the seeds of corruption in the city's own police station. Post-outbreak, plotting to pick off the police force one by one, disorienting his fellow officers and taking advantage of them, while the world outside is ending, all to secure his safety and paycheck. Slowly spiralling more and more into insanity. The original serves a more subtly horrifying take than the remake, which gives us a more upfront bad guy, who kidnaps Sherry literally the second we meet him, and implies some very terrible things about himself from the get-go. Either way, Claire's lucky to have escaped a confrontation with him before he eventually meets his demise by way of being torn apart from the inside by a G-creature, or by being torn apart flat out. Most of that is gone here, because we already have a villain. We have our antagonist in Birkin, and our whatever-inist in Wesker. So Irons is just a generally seedy, selfish asshole police chief who is here to explain some things to us, give shit to Leon, knock it out of town, and then die in a pretty similarly violent way. There may be some missing potential here to explore a different kind of evil and horror than what's being offered with Birkin, especially from a film that's vague marketing campaign was simply witness the beginning of evil. What evil? But he was very fun to watch. Quick note on the scene of the car park though, a police chief should be more professional than to not take note of how many bullets left in your gun. It's a simple 6-shooter. Did you really shoot 6 shots and then act surprised when you pulled the trigger and a 7th didn't come out? I'd understand with a normal pistol that holds like 15 bullets, but it was a 6-shooter. You can almost see. You should know better. Yeah. Richard. Can't remember if they included his last name in this. Like, I know Edward Dewey was turned into Dooley. Not much to say here other than he is, I guess, the amalgamation of every other STARS member who dies. We were teased with cool deaths a la his 2 cool possible deaths in the games. However, he simply dies to zombies. Something that's a shame, however, I think it's pretty cool. Someone needed to die to the zombie, and I'm glad it was someone from STARS. Don't forget that zombies are the whole point of this whole thing. Don't forget that zombies are a threat. They're the main continuous threat when you're playing the games, and if a character doesn't die to them, what is their point of even being here? Part 5. In conclusion. This is not the scariest movie. It definitely has its scary moments, but it doesn't feel like a horror movie. It feels like a love letter to horror movies and horror video games. It feels like the result of someone who went to film school and studied a bunch of old horror films, especially John Carpenter movies, and had to recreate a 90s-esque horror film using an existing IP and modern filming equipment. The movie looks stellar and is shot so well. The aesthetic is absolutely nailed, both for a horror genre and for Resident Evil. There's always been a certain vibrance of colour to my favourite Resident Evil games, and this was discussed in a design notes for the remake of Resident Evil 2, the biggest influence of this movie. And they got it. They nailed the look. Yes, it's ambitious to cram 2 games into one movie, but the thing is, the moneymaker, the story everyone loves, is Resident Evil 2, the story of Leon and Claire in Raccoon City escaping it through the police station. You can't tell that story without the origin of the outbreak and the first game. You can't tell Raccoon City's story without including the story of the mansion. The previous series of movies did just this, and it would be off to tread the same ground again. Would this more faithful take this time round? I doubt a movie based solely on the first Resident Evil would have done as well or been nearly as interesting, and it definitely wouldn't have helped greenlight a sequel. The first Terminator movie was designed after the ideas of the second had been conceived, and in a way it was designed as a prequel until technology and the world was ready for T2. And that was a gamble. Luckily it worked, and the world-changing 1984 sci-fi horror was able to spawn a great deal of hype for the 1991 sci-fi action flick, and we had the greatest sequel in cinema. It's up there with Aliens. Resident Evil 2 is that good in the gaming world, but in this day and age, would a movie on RE1 do that well? Resident Evil 2 is the gaming world's equivalent to that. It is the perfect sequel. It is the one everyone has seen or heard and played until Resident Evil 4 came out and outdid it again. But you can't have Resident Evil 2 without Resident Evil 1, even though Resident Evil 2 is the one everyone wants to do and talk about. We have countless zombie movies, even more horror movies. What was scary when these games were made is not as scary now. What is scary in video games is not scary in films. And I say this as someone who is a sucker for any piece of zombie outbreak media. So what are you going to do when your video game adaptation probably isn't going to be the scariest movie ever? You have fun with it. You produce something cool, fun, and B-movie-like in spirit. And they did it well and didn't fall into the later Resident Evil games' traps of taking themselves too seriously, nor did they fall into the traps that the movies fell into of just becoming an off-the-rails trip. It's a promising start for a new franchise, and probably the last chance for a while we're going to get a more faithful movie adaptation of these games. But that's okay, because I think it was pretty faithful. Everyone suddenly seems to want to apologise to the Paul W.S. Anderson films as if they're forgetting what a complete mess they were, just because they found something new to dislike. But they just need to take a step back, take a breather. No Resident Evil movie is going to be perfect. Resident Evil is a game series. It's meant to be enjoyed as a great collection of games. It's responsible for popularising the survival horror genre, as well as, in a way, zombie media, especially in the 90s, to some degree. Its influence in cinema and works of horror is already here, and its work is already done. They don't need to reinvent the undead wheel when it comes to making a movie, and to be honest, I thought they could. So they had fun, and they made a fun movie for the fans, and I liked it. And so that is my case in defence of Resident Evil. Welcome to Raccoon City. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, essay, review, response thing. It was fun, it was different. I've been trying a few different things. I want to start posting on this channel more because after the response I got from my Resident Evil 2 game movie, I just feel like there's something here now, and I want to become like a Resi person, a person who makes content on Resi things. So if you liked this, just let me know. I would like to talk about the games more, but obviously this movie is like the newest thing, so let's talk about the movie and be topical and relevant. And I'm constantly seeing things about it in every like page and group that I'm a part of. Everyone is giving this thing shit. So I just wanted to kind of, you know, put my opinion out there, because as someone who likes it, I liked watching videos where people were defending them, and it's just nice to know that, like, you know, someone out there thinks the same way you do, or just to find takes you agree with, or, you know, I might even change a few people's minds, who knows. I'm just happy to talk about Resident Evil. If you want to watch more of my videos, please in fact check out what I've mentioned a few times already, my Resident Evil 2 cinematic game movie. It's where I turned the game Resident Evil 2 into a movie using a bunch of mods, and I changed all sorts of things in it to make it work as a movie. The comments speak for themselves, the views, the likes still speaking for itself. It's doing very well. I'm very happy with how it's doing. So if you've not seen that, please check it out. If you have seen it, then thank you. Leave another comment, let me know what you thought. Okay, if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe. That would mean the world to me, because this is a new channel and I want it to take off. If you ring the bell and all that stuff, like this video if you liked it, leave a comment, let me know what you thought. If you're interested in me and more of what I do, I have a separate channel, that's just my main channel, Ava Cassandra, where I do the more drag and makeup side of things. Sorry, I keep swearing because I really need a wig. Other than that, you can check me out on other social media, that's just Ava Cassandra, it's all in the description. So for now, check out my older videos, subscribe for future videos, and I think that's all from me. Alright, thanks a lot for watching, bye!